Welcome to the Bolt Podcast. I'm Todd Burge, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and mental fitness coach. I'm here to help you unlock your leadership potential and ignite your personal growth. On the Bolt, my guests and I will dive into inspiring stories of transformation, showing how small mindset shifts can lead to life-changing benefits. We'll explore strategies for overcoming challenges, building high-performance habits, and leading with confidence. If you're ready to embrace a growth mindset and unlock your full potential, then let's ignite your spark today. All right, in the Bolt podcast studio today with Sam Falletta. Sam, welcome to the Bolt podcast, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
It's so good to have you, man. You and I have so much in common. I can't believe that we haven't crossed paths in the same area, same neighborhood. We went to the same high school, went to the same college. Go Zips.
Yep, go Zips.
And here we are today to talk about business, leadership, personal growth, and your journey.
Yeah.
So it's impressive. I love the story, and I know our listeners are going to love it as well. So tell us a little bit, give us the Cliff Notes about
Sure.
Sam and your journey from college and how you started, really ended up being with one company most of your career. And just kind of take us through it.
Yeah, so Incept, the company that I spent really my entire working career for, was a customer service contact center company. And I joke that, I don't think there's ever been a kid in the history of third or fourth grade career day who has said, like, if everything goes really well,
Right.
one day I'll grow up and work in a contact center. So a lot of times the question is, like, where do you even start that?
Right.
So my dad was an attorney. I was convinced I was going to be an attorney as well.
Okay.
And I was petrified of public speaking, and particularly being in front of people when I was public speaking. So I would try to get his advice and figure out, like, how do I manage this? And short version is, the only thing I could think of was that I would try to figure out kind of the speaking part without having to face a crowd.
Okay.
And then if I could learn the communication piece, then maybe I could add that on later. So when I was in college at Akron, my buddies are bartending or caddying or landscaping, and I found a contact center job. So for the local folks in Physician, which now is the naming rights of the stadium around us,
Mm-hmm.
and they taught, persuasion techniques and great listening skills. And I was more surprised than I expected to be that I really liked the work and the psychology behind it and the team. So switched my degree to marketing, realized I probably didn't want to be an attorney after all. And when I was graduating, kind of the thing to do at that time was mainly to go into pharmaceutical sales. So I had an opportunity lined up in Chicago, was pretty set on taking it, was planning to move and kind of move into the sales thing. And I had a friend from that college job who had said, if you talked to Jeff, who was one of our supervisors through school. And I had no idea what he was doing. Well, apparently he had started this small consulting firm that kind of worked in that same space. They said, I think you'd be interested in what he's got going on. And so we went and talked. It was his old apartment. The offices were 2 bedrooms. Like the bathroom had a shower in it.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
it was the
True
old
startup.
version. Yeah. And in the living room, there were like 4 cubicles for people that did kind of call center testing work.
Yeah.
So the short version of how that went down, he ends up basically saying, like, you got the job if you want it. I know you graduated, but unfortunately we can't afford to pay you even what you're making in your hourly job. You'd have to take a pay cut, and you've got to wait 3 weeks before we can afford a computer.
Oh.
I'm like, that's the worst job offer of all
Yeah,
time. Like,
right.
why,
Yeah.
you know what I'm looking at. Why would I take that?
Right.
And his answer was one of the biggest kind of forks in the road in my career. He said, only 2 things will happen. Either we'll take off, the company will grow, I won't have a lot of people to choose from, and you'll get to be an executive. Or we won't, we'll fail, I'll be a good reference, and you can probably go to Chicago and take the sales job in 6 months anyway. And I was like, yeah, that actually makes total sense. So I was 5th employee, worked essentially on the phone selling. At that time, it was like Chuck Norris and Christy Brinkley were promoting Total Gyms.
Oh, really?
So we were calling people who had inquired about a Total Gym and seeing if they wanted to make a purchase. Like, that was my
not a bad way
job.
to start. Chuck
Right.
Norris. I
Yeah.
could sell some Chuck Norris stuff.
Right.
Great dude.
And about 5 months in, we ended up with a big contract, went from 5 to 50. They didn't have a lot of people to choose from, so I got to be kind of the operations manager. And then really over the next 5 or 6 years, kind of progressed across the business. So I got to run some client services for a while, ended up picking up departments. I think 7 years in, the two brothers who were founders separated, and the founder asked if I wanted to run the business on his behalf. So I did that for about 10 years, and then about 10 years ago bought it, and then recently sold. So
you bought it?
Yeah. So I had.
Okay.
So I ran it on his behalf for about 10 years, and then have owned it for the last 10.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. So that's kind of the
What
beginning to end.
What a story, man. So let's go back for a minute. One, to make that decision, did you consult with anybody like your dad to say, "Hey, Dad, what do you think? Should I do this?"
Yeah, so I did, and you'll kind of hear this theme probably throughout. Like, my dad was definitely kind of the advisor, mentor.
Right.
He was frustratingly unwilling to give straight answers and would just ask questions. Part of it, I think, is the attorney by trade. The other part is like hey, this is yours, kid. You got to figure this out on your own.
Right.
And he really believed in the, like, what's the worst that can happen thing. So the if this doesn't work, you can probably go get that same job in 6 months. Really rang true to him. He's like, how important is it to be 6 months ahead? And it wasn't at all. We still had family locally. We still wanted to be around. So I think that probably you kind of hear a lot of the speakers talk about, like, the bet on yourself theory, like the chance to say, okay, if this works, it can be really good. And if it doesn't, there's almost no downside. Like, why don't I just take a shot? And that theme kind of replays itself multiple times throughout my career.
Interesting. You ever think about, what if you didn't? What if you said no?
Yeah, I don't think I would have been effective in that role. Even at the very beginning. Not to mention, almost everything in my life has been based in and around Akron. So the idea that I would have left would have been really different. But even that role, I don't think I would have been effective. I didn't know at the time, but the people leadership side of the business was far more compelling and fulfilling than the customer-facing solution architect. Like, that was fun, and I loved it, and I'm glad we got to help the companies we did. But it didn't, I guess, kind of provide the same level of fulfillment as when you're managing and leading people. Right.
Wow. I love it, man. What a great story. Started from the ground floor and went all the way, literally up to the top, bought the company, and then we'll talk about, the sale of it, which was, not too long ago in April, right? Yeah. Almost 30 years you spent with one company, which is really unheard of, right? Yeah. So lots of lessons along that journey, right? Yeah. So you said your dad was an attorney. Did he have his own practice, or did he work for some? Did you grow up in an entrepreneurial family?
No, not at all. So he was a labor attorney. So he worked at the ICWU building, kind of right down the street for a while. Then he represented pilots and teachers. So he was always kind of a union representative. So,
gotcha. Okay.
He also brought a lot of that. The need for employers to take care of their employees was a theme that, because he was negotiating on the employee's behalf. Right. So it was a little bit colored with, like, hey, unchecked, you can find capitalists who will treat their people poorly. So I got to see some of the downsides of leadership, but I also got to hear some of the inspiration about, like, leaders who did really effective work or who treated their people really well. And the actual stories of the difference that made, right? The families who could send their kids to college, or the impact that this latest contract negotiation made for each of the individual employees. Like, those were the things that he would bring home consistently when he talked about what was fulfilling to him, was to be able to find something that made a difference in the lives of those people that he represented.
So I would imagine that had a tremendous influence on you and your leadership.
Huge. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Was there any particular lesson or story that you could recall that you're like, man, that just grabbed me? And
yeah, there were. It really, our philosophy kind of came rooted from that, and it really was a mixture of, like, the reality of capitalism and kind of the lessons I had learned from my dad. So we were a labor-based business. I mentioned, pretty early in my career, I had the opportunity to become the president. I think I was 30.
Oh, geez.
And at that time we had done the math, and I didn't have any experience. I'd never worked anywhere else. We were never that big.
Right. How do you be a leader when you have no training and no experience?
And pretty early on, seeing 75 to 80% of our total expenses were related to labor. The place that I first ended up directing most of my energy was into kind of what we've all ended up reading now, which is like, how do you create employee engagement?
Mm-hmm.
So we started with Marcus Buckingham primarily.
Okay.
We ended up adopting the Gallup Q12 as kind of the model of how we were going to measure engagement. And the rest of the time was chasing this combination of how do you provide the things that the literature says is necessary and debating where the literature is wrong for the population that we served. So the shortest version of that is we ended up implementing everything off the charts in employee engagement, but had not dramatically changed turnover and could not figure out why that was as drastic as it was.
Oh, I want to, let's stay there for a minute, because that's...
So what really the last 15 years for sure has been trying to prove or disprove what has become my hypothesis, that most of those tools, Q12, certainly Fortune's top workplaces, they all make some presumptions that the employee base is kind of middle to top of Maslow's hierarchy. Right? So when you talk about like, what perks do you have, dry cleaning matters to some portion of the population, but it couldn't be less relevant to 60% of the people that work out there that are making $45,000 or less.
Right.
So we were off the charts in employee engagement, and we were still kind of beating industry standard on turnover, but not to the way the correlation should work. So I brought it to this Vistage group, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. It said, the numbers don't make sense. Somebody's got to talk me through why you think this is. And there were two great observations. One was the Maslow's hierarchy question. Like, we had built our start with why and done our Simon Sinek tier.
Yep.
And we had told this really compelling story about why this is going to help you become self-actualized and the best version of yourself. And the question was, do your people really care about that? Like, that's an interesting story, and I'm glad you're doing it, but that isn't what your employees are worried about. And the second was, maybe a shitty job that's worth $3 an hour more is better than a great job worth $3 an hour less. And as we did our research in the population, that was exactly what we'd hear. We'd hear over and over in an exit interview. Anything we could have done different? Nope, love it. Why are you leaving? My brother started a landscaping company. He's going to pay me $18 an hour.
Oh.
Do you want to do that? No, but it's $18 an hour. And so all of these kind of twists and turns were based on the observation that some of that applies, but for some population, now a much larger population than all of us want it to be,
right,
there's a whole different set of rules that have to be applied that kind of meet the people where they are, whether that's mental health counseling, the way we ran our incentives, the way our performance management worked. We kind of modified that whole world to meet our team where it was, which was a pretty far departure from a lot of the literature and the way it would tell you how to manage a group like that.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you do that for 250 to 500 people? I think that's fine for maybe my company of 10 to 15 people, right? Meet them where they are. And I love that. And that's kind of the philosophy that we've adopted. Yeah. And even that still has its challenges, but much better results, as you stated. But so how do you do that? Are there any tips, tricks, silver bullets?
Yeah, the managerial framework was important. So the individual leaders of teams. So there was an individual who ran kind of their 12 to 15 person team. Getting that person exactly right was really, really important to us. The performance management system and kind of how you help somebody think about their strengths as opposed to correct their weaknesses, and the way you deliver performance reviews was really, really important.
Appreciative inquiry.
Exactly. And so we had this series of behaviors. So kind of our hierarchy was our vision, our mission, our values, and our behaviors. And the hard part about the three on the bottom is they all sound really good, but it's really hard to see them in action. So we had this layer of behaviors that was like, okay, this, like when you're acting this way, this is how you know you are representing who we're trying to be. And the first one of those was a behavior that we called, you're the most important person you'll ever manage. And the activity around that was, take a minute. I'll kind of add an extra pause. Take a minute and write on a piece of paper the comments you say to yourself most frequently throughout the day. And we'd give people time to sit and write that and say, like, okay, now pretend that your manager is saying those same things to you. Like, what is the quality of the relationship you would have with a manager who talks to you that way? And overwhelmingly, that self-talk is negative. You didn't do well enough. You failed. Right. Another mistake. Blah, blah, blah.
I mean, we're negative biased people. It's just how we're wired.
And so when you think about the role of a manager, it's not just to have the relationship that somebody wants. It's to actually overcome the self-talk that already has them starting it as a deficit.
Yep.
So when we found that, that was the training that went to the supervisor, was not just like, you have to do what's in the book. It's you have to do what's in the book and compensate for what already is fighting against you. It's the devil angel. You can be the angel, but you got to be stronger than the devil on the other side.
Oh, I love it.
And you have to help somebody make a lot of those realizations themselves. So that turned into, we identified that people had unresolved trauma issues that we were not prepared or capable to resolve. So we brought in an organization that was actually counseling. When we were physically present, we just had a counselor on site every hour we were open. Oh. Somebody wanted to schedule time, whether it was, coaching, tune-up, training, trauma resolution. That was part of the team.
And how much was that utilized?
It was really interesting. There were the people who were early adopters, and that was probably 20, and they had no fear of it, no worry about kind of the stigma.
Sure.
Had clearly sought some counseling before.
Gotcha.
And it took them being the advocate to kind of open up the rest of the group.
Gotcha.
To be willing to say, I'll do it.
Yep.
We kept it on the clock. That was one of our worries was, well, nobody's going to sacrifice pay to do it. So we kept it a paid function.
Yeah. Yep.
We had to have it be confidential. The only way they could disclose what happened is the same way, so you couldn't go complain about a supervisor and then worry that counselor would come in and tell HR about it. Mm-hmm. So we had to draw all those lines to be really specific about kind of where the difference was. So I think by the end of being in a physical location, kind of pre-COVID, we had gotten up to 23, 24% kind of utilization of the team.
Okay.
Maybe half of that was consistent. Like they had their weekly scheduled appointment and they did it. That group also was exceptional at like referrals to the community. So they were counselors, but they were also behavioral health specialists. You could say, oh, if you're stressed about bills, like not only can I help you cope with that, but I also can point you at a resource that can help you solve some of these problems over there. So that, that was kind of the supervisor training was a function. The in-house staff was a function. We changed the way we did all our incentives. So we used to reward, we'd give a gift card for a steakhouse or something like that. We had one, and I've told this story a couple times, but we had this, it was like a 2-year process that if you were exceptional in your job, you would get to the point that we would pay for a vacation for you and your family. Oh. And it was like, Kalahari. It was something local, but it was like a weekend trip.
Okay. Still, Kalahari can, I've been there.
It wasn't cheap.
It can add up.
And we had an employee come up and say, like, I'm really excited. Thanks. I appreciate it. But I need a mattress. Like, I'd love to take my kids to Kalahari, but what I need more than anything is a mattress. Like, if I spend less than Kalahari, can you just buy a mattress?
Oh,
and we're like, whoa, we have this all wrong.
Dude, wow. Yeah. That's just like...
And
facepalm.
And it's, that's what the book would tell you, right? Public recognition, let them take pictures, let them post, like, look at the place that my job sent me. How cool is this? And it had nothing to do with where our people were. So steak dinners turned into gas cards. Essentially every incentive became a Walmart card or something like that afterwards. So when I say, like, we really fundamentally changed the way we operated kind of based on this principle, it was really across everything.
Mm-hmm. Wow, dude, I love it. I love it. I love how open you were and how willing you were to. I mean, these are big initiatives, right? These take time, they take money, take resources, and to be willing to make that call to do that for your employees, I think says a lot about you, your leadership, and obviously the company. But do you think that had an impact? Those changes, like, were you able to tie it into an ROI? Did your people have better engagement? Were their numbers? Because I know in a call center, like, you're tracking everything. So that is the one beautiful thing about that service industry, is you can really see how somebody's producing or not, right?
100%. Yeah, so we had the luxury of being able to see everything. We also were pretty unique in the way we built our financial model, and that almost all of it was pay for performance. Okay. So for the customers that we served, it was a fairly extensive process, but ultimately we'd say, what's the outcome you need? And when we achieve that outcome, we get rewarded, and if we don't, it's on us. And the reason we wanted to do that was to be able to collect all the data that would tell us what actually works for them. We didn't want to have this negotiation at the end of every year where it was some labor-based, okay, now let's haggle, and you're going to tell me it should be 5% less, and I'm going to convince you it's 5% more, but it's all going to be fuzzy.
Sure.
And so we would spend, in almost every instance, we would spend that time at the beginning of the relationship to say, help us understand what you're driving to, help us figure out how to measure it, help us figure out what the value is, and then we'll figure out the math behind that. And because we had visibility most other competitors didn't, and then because we could create compensation alignment with our employees in ways most couldn't,
right,
we were able to outperform in most instances where we were competing with somebody else. So we felt like, A, if you can work in a way that that employee knows that you see them, aren't just paying them transactionally, but then B, if you can give them visibility and reward them on the things that actually matter to the customer, not the proxy that you use to keep them 3 steps away from the financials, that actually becomes a strategic advantage, not just kind of operational or managerial fluff. So yeah, we had a really, I think we won the Weatherhead 100 4 times in a row. Smart Business. We spent a lot of time at some Smart Business events, which was really enjoyable.
Top Workplace 14 times.
Yeah, that and some of those, all of the awards are wonderful.
Yeah.
The ones that are the direct reflection of the employees' opinions, like the Top Workplace ones, like those were the ones that we felt like, okay, these are anonymous surveys being reported by our employees, rated against other organizations. Like, that's really where we felt the pride was around those kind of things where we're like, okay, we feel like it's working, and we feel like it's also commercially capable. I think either of those without the other one gets really hard. It's like, man, it'd be great to treat our employees well, but if you don't manage it within the commercial confines, you're just not around long enough to make much of a difference. Right. And if you're commercially successful, but you're not treating people well, you probably won't be around long enough to make much of a difference either.
Right.
So
there's that
the fact that we had a run where we managed both of those was pretty exciting.
Yeah. 14 years, man. Congratulations. You've had a lot of accomplishments, and obviously the sale of the company, but I would imagine that's probably one of your most favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That is
by far.
Direct reflection of you, how you run the operation, your leadership team, your management team.
I would certainly spread that. We had some
so
remarkable people.
Person,
Right? I was lucky before I ever owned the business, and really the team that was around when I got there was exceptional. The previous founder had this phrase that provided way more guidance than we realized at the time. And he would just kind of say it off the cuff. He'd say, like, if you treat people with dignity and respect, they'll repay you in loyalty and performance. And it was just kind of like a managerial, like, that was just a coaching phrase. But it became way more than that as we learned, like, okay, how do I make this decision? When it really became something you could bounce a lot of your choices off of.
Right.
To say, does this meet the criteria that we were founded under?
Right. Almost like core values.
100%. 100%.
Wow. Can you say it one more time?
If you treat people with dignity and respect, they'll repay you in performance and loyalty.
It's kind of like the golden rule, man.
Right.
It's pretty simple, really. And a lot of business and leadership is quite simple. And I know, right? Running
simple, not easy.
Simple, not
but
easy.
It is.
I mean, really, it goes back to simple principles. We'll be right back after this short message. Hey, it's Todd again. Did you know that mental fitness is the secret weapon for transformational leadership? Your mind may be sabotaging you, leading you down a path of stress and negativity, but it doesn't have to be this way. If you're ready to unlock the resilience to empower yourself and the team you lead, listen up. Through the Positive Intelligence Program, PQ for short, I help leaders build mental strength, manage stress, and increase emotional intelligence. Imagine reducing burnout, improving your relationships, and increasing performance, all backed by neuroscience. Look, I'm living proof of its power, having rewired my brain after building my mental fitness with PQ over the last 5 years. Are you ready to build yours? Visit toddbirch.com for more information, and let's get a free consultation scheduled today. Now back to the show. So you led this company 3 decades, right? Almost 30 years. Yeah. A lot happens over that time.
I feel so old.
Well, yeah, and I've been in mine for 16, and I feel like every 5 years there's something significant that happens, right? A challenge or change, turnover, good, bad, and different. It just seems like it is a bit cyclical. Over the course of those 28 years, were there certain milestones or barriers or challenges or industry shifts, COVID aside, we know that one, right?
Yep.
And we can talk about that a little bit, but where there were lessons, you were like, okay, wow, how am I going to handle this? And what did you do to overcome that? Something that, our listeners can take away and say, wow, okay, I can learn from this.
Yeah, so many. There's a phrase, I think it's Stephen Covey, who says, like, we see the world not as it is, but how we are. Mm-hmm. And as I think back, and I'm sure this will change kind of the further I get from it, the most significant changes for me seem to come in places where either I learned something different about myself or I was forced to deal with something in a different way. So at different levels of scale, it kind of requires you to be a different person. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's a great external event. A big customer comes on and now all of a sudden you have to go from X to Y employees. Mm-hmm. And every one of your behaviors has to be completely different. Well, the person you are on the inside is what drives that. Are you secure? Are you confident? Are you willing to take risks? Are you willing to be exposed to failure? Everybody can pick that stuff up. Mm-hmm. Like, you can have an incredibly inspirational speech and everybody knows if you don't mean it.
Right.
So we had multiple times where we kind of scaled up. We had, unfortunately, a few times where we had scaled down. Mm-hmm. And in each one of those, although kind of in the financials and on the books, they would look like it was the exact same thing, I interacted with them in completely different ways. Oh. So early on, we had done a ton of work for Microsoft. At that time, Microsoft was the biggest company in the world, the most innovative. Couldn't believe we even had a contract to be in these little guys from Northeast Ohio. And they pulled the plug at the last second. And before I even had kind of the full responsibility for it, we ended up having to make a few cuts. And I had to be the person who was delivering that message. And almost everybody we had talked to, it was 2 or 3, not 50, but I vowed in that moment that I never wanted to sit in that spot again. Mm-hmm. That through no fault of somebody's own, essentially they ended up in a position where they were no longer employed.
Right.
Easier said than done, but that difference at that age, when the people I was sitting, when I'm 26 and the person I'm talking to is 43 with 2 kids, that's a totally different world. Mm-hmm. And at the moment, it felt like the worst thing that could happen professionally. And looking back, I feel incredibly lucky to have experienced that early on, mm-hmm. because it could frame so many other things.
Yep.
Other times we'd get to a spot where growth would happen. And when it happened at the beginning, I was way more reluctant to take a shot at people who hadn't kind of proven their competence. And the further we got, it was like, if they have the characteristics that look like somebody who's going to be a good leader, take the shot. You don't need to check every box.
Right.
People will step into what you ask of them. It was probably all around kind of scale and people philosophies. Take chances early. We would say kind of place big bets early on people. And a huge portion of that was the product of the fact that people did that for me. Like I never would have had any of the opportunities I had if somebody didn't go against what somebody had told them once and give me a chance. Right. So each one had kind of a different flavor.
Yeah. I've been in that position, scaling up at a much smaller scale, and then anytime you have to let somebody go, right? Let them go because of scaling back, not firing somebody for performance or what have you. It's tough, man. Yeah. I don't care what age you are. That is a tough conversation to have. I wish I could say that I handled it with, in the best way that I should have. I don't think I did, but like you, I'm very gracious for the opportunity and have went back and been able to kind of reconnect with those people, to just say, hey, man, that maybe I didn't handle this the right way, but
good for you. That's hard.
That's
a hard call to make.
Yeah, it is. Heart's always been in the right place, but sometimes we have some other characteristics that just have us doing things that maybe we shouldn't be doing. But wow. So let's talk about a little bit. So you just sold in April. The past 5 years have been crazy different, right? So you're running this business for 20 some years. Yeah, you've had a lot of changes and shifts, but COVID and then the workplace totally changed.
100%.
We see Gallup polls of 79, 80% of people disengaged, where you claim and you've seen we've put an effort on high engagement. So I'm curious to learn a little bit about kind of the last 5 years and how that was running a business, leadership, and all these things that you put in place. Did they still hold true? Or did you have to really look at things, pull the cover up and say, man, we need to reinvent again?
Right. Oh, man. So my opinion on so many of them has changed through the process. So initially we thought it was a blessing. We were able to kind of formally conduct business as usual. Our employees no longer had commutes. Weather was no longer a concern. Childcare, which would prevent people from being able to come to the office a lot of times, was no longer an issue. I really underestimated how significant the culture we built was based on physical proximity. And my observation now is that being remote has really harmed probably not the individual performance on behalf of a customer, but the organization, the way we built the camaraderie and the relationships. And the example that I've used to try to simplify it is like when we were in the building, we had constructed everything on these individual teams, right? The way the booths were laid out, the person that was in that row kind of modeled what an athletic coach was like, right? They would kind of review your film. They'd coach you up in these places. They were inspirational, and it was high energy. And all of a sudden, remotely, you can simulate that on a group Zoom call, but it is not the same function. It
is not.
So that role really is more of a counselor today, not in terms of a therapist, but like you're a great listener. I'm saying back, like, is what I'm hearing this, that, and the other thing?
Right. So
kind of organizationally, really the job functions have shifted quite a bit to a fully remote world. I also think, I don't have any data on this, and I'd love to see what it is, but I think, I believe remote is good, and I believe it's here to stay, so maybe it doesn't matter if it's good. But one of the things that I think we saw was in our environment when somebody left home, came to work, and all of that stuff was gone, whatever it is, your kids, your parents' health, you were in a place where you were in total control. You were feeling good about yourself, or you could be helped to feel good about yourself. You could celebrate a win. And then when you leave, the world comes back. There's no separation of that anymore. So if you're at home and you're doing our job or a lot of jobs, and the kids are a problem or the parents are a problem or whatever, like there is no difference between those two. Mm-hmm. And I think in looking back, there's 50 things that I could do different now, but I don't think I realized our strengths were as important as they were. And I don't think I emphasized them to the degree I needed to when we made that shift. Yeah. So we would do a weekly town hall where every Monday at 6:00, I'd come out, everybody would pause, we'd have a meeting together. And I would talk about what I thought was important, but I could also hear what anybody else thought was important and respond to it in the moment. What felt like you could convert that to remote, it's nowhere close to the same thing, right? They can't feel your presence. They can't see your comfort level.
Are they on
Nobody's
camera?
willing to actually ask the same question that they would ask you before or after the meeting.
No.
And so I think a lot of it, and I think the culture, which really at its root was our narrative was, we want you to be the best version of yourself, and we want to help you get there. So you can modify that to be remote, but it doesn't have that same collective feeling that I think we were able to build in a physical presence.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. It's been challenging, and I agree it's here to stay. It doesn't mean that I have to love it. You and I are the same age. When you come up, and it's change, and we can talk a lot about change. And I'm not opposed to change. In fact, that's my keynote. I talk about change. I understand it. I know why we resist it, but still doesn't mean I need to love it. But I know that it's important. And so when we came back from COVID, we created a policy called Work Your Way. I don't care. Work however you want to work. I have a beautiful building here, beautiful space for you. You want to come in 1 day, 2 days, full every day, fine. Or if you want to just work from home, that's fine too. I didn't want to lose my people, right? And took the temperature. They wanted to stay home.
100%.
And I get it. Every now and then I'll do it, and I can bust out some laundry. I can take the dog for a walk, or if I got some work being done, I just had a new furnace installed. I can be there, and I'm tapping, double dipping, multitasking. But every day, just not for me, man. I need that separation. I like getting up, getting a little dressed, cleaned up, and going into the office.
Learning that more and more about myself every day.
And people. I created a business because I love people. I love being around. So I wanted to create, something that was meaningful and different, and create the culture and have that family feel. But you just can't do it. There are a number of things that you can try to do, but Zoom, Teams, whatever the platform is, it's not the same. And I don't think it will ever be the same. So I think business now, there's a challenge, right? And we see the numbers. I think a lot of people do agree that their employees are disengaged. Managers are close to the same numbers according to Gallup. So it starts at the top. So when you have the managers disengaged, well, your direct reports aren't going to be engaged either. So it's a pretty easy trickle. It's unfortunate. I think there's a number of things we can do. I think what you were doing early on probably helped tremendously when COVID came. I'm going to imagine having, right, because we see the numbers with mental health, burnout, disengagement, they're all rising, unfortunately. And that's costing, our business trillions of dollars. But having, those intentional things in place like you did, having a therapist, how many companies do, especially, your size in Northeast Ohio, took the effort to say, I'm going to have somebody on staff. But when you're working from home,
right?
Maybe you can do telehealth, whatever.
We still try. Ultimately, this question had a huge influence on who we ended up choosing to sell to. So the eventual buyer, Verifast, is a company that's almost, I think there'll be 50 in the spring, founded and have run their entire time as a remote organization. So we felt like if this is the reality, and if ultimately kind of due to my own inability to reach what world-class execution looked like in a remote environment, then if our goal is to stay world-class culture, then you have to find somebody who's already done it and done it well.
Right.
And there's a lot of people, especially now, if you're thinking about or looking to sell, you'll get a zillion private equity calls. In our industry, you'll get a zillion international buyers. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the choice to find somebody from Northeast Ohio, who I had already known for 10 years, and who had a company that had really been built on the premise of how do you create exceptional employee engagement in a remote environment first, ended up being as important as any of the other factors, and saying like, okay, maybe this is somebody who can cover, I don't know if flaws is the right word, but I guess my flaws in not having adapted as quickly as we could have.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. If you don't mind spending just a little bit of time there, because I think it's interesting, and some people might want to learn about just kind of that process. One, how long did it take, the sales process, and two, how did you get to that point, right, where you said, okay, it's time?
Yeah.
If you don't mind. And
yeah, no problem. I'll do them in reverse. So the first, like, how did I get there? Really, so Vistage, I'll mention for a second, just in case anybody doesn't know what it is.
Yeah, Phil. Yeah, thank you.
Vistage is essentially a CEO peer organization. I think it may now be the world's largest. And functionally, the way it works is you meet once a month. There's a chairperson who kind of facilitates for the group. There's almost always an expert speaker. And then there's somewhere between 15 and 20 non-competitive CEOs who come and kind of share, best practices. You do a full business review once a year. You share issues. And I've been lucky enough and intentional enough, I guess, to be a member for about 17 years. And it's some of the most interesting quality people I've ever met. It has been by far the biggest development effort I've made around professional improvement.
Good to hear.
And one of the benefits of that is you get to see people a lot of times towards the end of their career considering retirement, and you get to know them well enough that you can ask them those kind of questions. What would you do different if you had to do it again? How? And almost to a person, they would say, like, professionally, I don't have many regrets. Like, I did as well as I could. I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. And when I learned, I did different. And I wouldn't say everybody, but a pretty high percentage have really specific memories of either times in their lives or times in their kids' lives where the business overtook their ability to be as present as they wanted to be personally, whether it was a father or a husband or a wife, however that was structured. Mm-hmm. And hearing that story more and more and realizing my kid, and everybody would tell me, so my kids are 10 and 12, and everybody would say, like, man, these are the golden years. Like, it's not going to be that much longer.
Yep.
It's not 18 when the kids leave. It's like 14, 15 when they don't want to spend time. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like there was this window that was about to close that I'd never be able to reopen again. So that was really what prompted some of the consideration to say, I've done one thing my whole life, incredibly fulfilled by it, probably accomplished more than I thought I would have in an entire career, luckily at an age earlier than I thought we'd get there.
Right.
Started worrying about this potential of, like, am I going to miss this window? And then the reality, and you probably see this, is like, you can set up all the systems you want. Mm-hmm. You can have the best people in the world, but when you own it, it does not go away. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I had practiced all of, I was meditating and I was using systems in place, and we ran EOS, we did all of that stuff. But the closest I could ever come with an analogy is it's like the difference between being a father and an uncle. Like, I ran the business before I bought it for 15 years, and I felt like I lived and died with that thing. Mm-hmm. And it is not the same. And in the father-uncle thing is like, man, when I'm with my nieces and nephews, I feel like I love them more than anything in the world. Mm-hmm. And I give them back, and they go away. And when your kids could be nowhere near you for 2 weeks at a time, and they are never that far out of your mind. And that was the way it felt like running a business. So I thought there was ways to, like, oh, I'll just have this as a thing and I'll be the owner. Well, it's still your name on a Glassdoor review. It's still, every customer is still going to escalate to you at some point. Mm-hmm. And so I wondered, like, is this the time to think about what a second chapter could look like, and do I want to try to figure it out? So it really was two very internally motivated things. Didn't really, it wasn't trying to time the market. It wasn't trying to figure out, like, is this maximum valuation, any of that kind of stuff. So I had a good friend who owned a business very similar. They had sold, they had reached out after it was done and said, hey, if this is even close to your radar, I have some lessons that we learned in the process. Are you interested in them?
Yes. Yes, please.
100%. So they walked me through everything. They went through a full process with a broker, fielded, hundreds of calls, months of time, ultimately chose the most lucrative financial decision, and I'm not certain that's exactly the way they would have done it if they could do it again. So we did about half of that process first. Typically, it was people who were in that same engagement, used the same broker, had a series of discussions with private equity, series of discussion with international buyers, and I just couldn't get comfortable that was going to be the right choice.
Right.
So we got reasonably far down the path a few different times. For anybody who's thinking about it, if you have a network, an advisory board, a group of friends, like, that's the place to lean on them the most. And you need them to be as honest as you can, because you really got to figure out kind of why are you doing it. Because without that, people will just evaluate the financial components of the deal. So ultimately decided that was not the route we wanted to go. Kind of hunkered back in as if that was going to be another 5-year path. And then the eventual buyer, Verifast, was not in that process. But the owner and I had known each other and met to say, like, hey, is there a fit here? And from the time we concluded there was until the time we closed was less than 90 days.
Oh,
so it was just super core. When you know somebody and have a lot of faith on both sides,
right,
the things that usually feel like big sticking points aren't big sticking points. When my incentive is for it to continue to be successful long term, the things that you're trying to get aren't the things that are the most important.
Right.
So I felt really, really lucky in being able to find a fit that kind of valued what we had built and tried to extend it more than just the transaction for somebody who kind of buys and sells businesses as they come.
Right. No, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love that analogy. I know it's got to be a difficult decision to make, and one that's not made lightly or shouldn't be made lightly.
Right.
And now here you are having a conversation with me on a Friday morning, right? Not too bad. Second,
good gig.
Your second path. Well, let's talk about Sam and what you're doing now.
Yeah.
What's next for Sam? I know I'd love to talk about Capiches.
Yeah. So I really don't have Act 2 defined yet.
Okay.
My mom loves to tell everybody that I'm retired. That's certainly not it. I know I'm not going to stay bored for very long. So Capiches actually was kind of the creative outlet that I just told myself I'd never not do. So the idea came from, we talked a little bit at the beginning, kind of the wisdom of my dad. So my dad had Parkinson's, affected him for probably his last 6 or 7 years, and then ultimately has passed away just recently. It's been 10 years. So my kids never really got to know him. So I had started sharing on significant dates these old stories from him. And I had started posting a few of them, and I got some really good feedback on, like, oh, that's cool. Like, you should put these together somewhere. You should make sure the kids know their grandpa. So it started as just like this personal exercise to say, like, oh, I want my kids to know the most meaningful life lessons that came from my dad. So I started taking all those down. After the sale, I had, probably 15 or 16 of the stories, and I was like, maybe this is a book. I just wasn't sure what to do it, but I knew it needed to be edited. And one of the people I took it to help me with that is like, I don't know that this is his book as much as it is a community. Would you be open to the idea of kind of telling these stories in a place where people can add their reflections or their similar stories? So that's now what it's become. So I think we're on like Capiche, and I'll explain the naming in a second. We're on like 16 or 17. So we release one Capiche a week.
Okay.
It's a story that's like one of these significant lessons from my dad that's kind of a broader lesson than the narrow story.
Okay.
And then the community is where people can either comment on that or add their own. And the hope is that the site eventually kind of becomes this crowdsourced, like Aesop's Fables version of collective wisdom.
Yeah.
But not these theoretical narratives, like people's real life lessons. Where if you said like, hey, how do I deal with this thing? You can search on it and go find a series of people who say, I was in this spot and here's the advice that was really helpful to me. So the Capiche story was, so all four grandparents are from Italy. My dad's parents were kind of the strongest in their heritage. And my grandpa was known for being a pretty intense guy. So when he would say capiche, which literal translation is "do you understand?" But for him, it was like a statement. It was like, you better understand this. This is a critical lesson. So when we were trying to figure out like the name of these stories, that ended up becoming hey, these are critical lessons. These are things that are really important to understand.
And I can't believe you got Capiches.com. Did you have, was that available or did you have to go?
No, it was actually available. There's a few different ways to spell it.
Okay. Gotcha.
So the ones that the traditional Italian heritage would say it's probably the Americanized spelling.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it was worth it to have something that people would know more likely than
and we'll include it in the show notes for sure. But I love it. I saw you post on it a few months ago and I checked it out. I think it's a wonderful idea. I personally feel like it's a book.
Yeah.
I feel like once you get enough in there,
that's helpful.
It would be great just to have that. In that, I don't know, I'm old school. I love that format, right? And it's just one of those things I refer to a Bible, compare it to a Bible, but it's just a series of stories. So you can just go and pick up short stories and put it back down, as opposed to just, sitting reading for hours. But I love it, man. I love the intentionality behind it. I love really everything about it. There's story. They're real stories from your dad, your grandpa, from you, and then from the community.
I knew if I didn't do it now, I probably wouldn't. And I was really hesitant. We've talked about like the willingness to kind of face failure and to take a shot, and especially on a creative end, to put things out in the world like that. And I was like, you know what? If I don't do it now, I can justify forever not doing it.
Right.
But if I get too far into this process and I haven't continued to create, I think I'm going to regret it.
Right.
So that, the other conversations I'm having are far more practical about like, do I want to go back into teaching? Maybe do I want to try another business again soon? So I think for now, I just want to continue to investigate like really where are my strengths? Like now that I look back, people ask a lot, are you like, do you miss it? Do you like, how do you react? It's almost more, I'm surprised that I did it as long as I did, because I don't feel like most of my leadership roles were kind of reluctant. I never strove, I didn't walk into the room and say like, this is
right,
like, give this to me.
Right.
And so now I look back a little bit and I'm like, I don't know that what I was doing is what I was meant to be doing. And in some ways I'm kind of proud of how I adapted. In other ways I question, like, is that as authentic as I could or should have been? So I don't know exactly what happens next, but I'm going to leave myself enough time to figure it out.
All right, Sam. So we're going to do the lightning bolt round.
Okay.
These are quick hits.
All right.
We're not going into a ton of explanation here, just some rapid fire questions.
All right.
If you could describe leadership in one word, what would it be?
Listening.
Makes sense for your experience
Yep.
and what you guys did at INSEP.
Yeah.
All right. Who is a leader that you admire and why? Could be anybody, living, dead.
I'm going to use a category, like so maybe a broader, like military, police, firefighter. Leadership where lives are on the line makes all of the other things that we call leadership pale in comparison. I would have liked to think that the things that I did had some relative significance, but the reality was if I made a bad decision, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Right.
And people who can lead in situations where a bad decision is a big deal, to me, it feels like two different sports.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And this is a pretty common one that most people ask, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. What's the most important lesson you've learned in life so far?
a good one.
Yeah, I know it's a tough one.
I think the strength of relationships are in the individual conversations. Like every conversation matters. There's we used it at work, but it was far more a product of who we were as people. Like every individual conversation strengthens or weakens a relationship. And the result of those relationships aren't a surprise to anybody. It's like the accumulation of all the things you put in. There's probably a more succinct version of that.
No,
but that's a great one.
No, yeah. And what's your favorite song? I know this is going to be tough because I've read. So 2 things important to you, family and music.
Yeah.
So I had to ask this one, and I didn't prep you for this one.
No, it's so good. What I Got by Sublime is probably my favorite song.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's some story about like the music that's most significant to you comes at certain phases.
I was going to say, yeah.
That reminds me of college. Like
okay.
That, and that was before real responsibility.
Right, yeah. Before CEO at 26 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What book are you reading right now? Or books?
I just started The Courage to be Disliked.
Okay.
Last night, actually. Okay. And I just
Who's that by? Do you remember?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
I'll pull it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's some 30 pages in maybe, but man, fascinating so far.
Okay.
And then I just finished The Art of Spending Money by Morgan Housel, who is the author of The Psychology of Money. It's kind of his follow-up, which is if one whole version is the discipline of acquiring and retaining, we spend way less time thinking about how we use it to our benefit. So The Art of Spending Money is kind of that whole conversation, which was useful timing and a really profound way to think about life.
Yep, absolutely. Do you have a favorite leadership or personal growth book that's like your go-to or that you gift out the most or that you would give to your leadership team? So I'm thinking we have leaders listening to the show. You know, you say, hey, man, you need to get this book. I highly recommend it for your leader or your management team.
The one that was most impactful to me was really First Break All the Rules. So Marcus Buckingham, which led me down kind of the Gallup path.
Okay.
The one that's probably the most dog-eared it was Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Okay.
I know a lot of people.
I thought you were going to say Steve Covey, but
it's
Good to Great.
It became a playbook in a lot of ways. Yeah. One I probably had the most fun with. So I like a lot of Malcolm Gladwell stuff, particularly Outliers.
Okay,
was really good because it shows all the places where you think that you have control, but it's either luck or timing, or so it was like a good contrast between the three of those.
Yeah, I love Outliers. Tipping Point is one of my favorites of all time. It's kind of the one that I understood and really changed my trajectory in terms of just personal growth and marketing and just life in general. Great book, and he was just here in town.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was just at the Cleveland Public Library. They have a series. I know I missed it too. I'm like, Malcolm's here. But cool. All right, last one.
All right.
How does Sam define success?
I'm trying not to steal.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett's. But I like it too much. His is if the people you love you back. And I don't know that I have a better one.
That's
than that.
okay. Yeah, you can use that.
That one's great. Yeah, I like that.
Awesome. Say that again for me.
If the people you love you back.
The people you love you back. Sounds like that's how you ran your business.
Tried.
Yeah.
We tried.
All right, my friend. Dude, this has been an amazing conversation. Lots of nuggets here. Thank you for sharing your stories, getting personal, getting vulnerable with us. I wish you all the best, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me. It was fun to talk about. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Bolt Podcast. I appreciate you spending some time with us today, and it's been a pleasure being part of your journey toward growth, transformation, and leadership. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and leave a review. It truly helps us reach more people like you. Interested in taking your leadership to the next level? Visit toddbirch.com to learn more about my keynote speaking, corporate training programs, and my positive intelligence coaching. Look, I'm here to help you build the mental resilience and leadership skills that drive lasting change. And remember, progress comes from small, consistent steps. Keep moving forward, my friends. And before we wrap, a quick reminder that the information shared on the Bolt podcast, along with anything from toddbirch.com or all my social media channels, is for informational and educational purposes only. We all need support, and if you're seeking meaningful guidance, one of the best things you can do is talk to a licensed professional, whether that's a physician, therapist, or coach. Hey guys, take care of yourself, stay kind to your mind, and remember, help is always available when you need it. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.